Yeah, I think that the feeling is a general feeling amongst everyone who's ever been involved with the club. It's obviously a very, very sad story, and the way the club has ceased to exist. I think everyone is gutted with the fact that we don't have a Bidvest Wits any longer. It's particularly sad that after 99 years, 1 year short of 100 years, that the club should dissolve, because I think that's probably the appropriate word to use under the circumstances. Me personally, very, very sad to see what has happened to Bidvest Wits. Sad for everyone who's ever been involved in the club, sad for everyone who's currently involved in the club. I say with a great deal of pride that I think that, and I've worked at Mamelodi Sundowns and I've worked at Supersport United, and I was fortunate to work with great people there, but this club has a particularly has left a soft spot in my heart, because you couldn't hope to have a better bunch of people working at this club. It's a huge loss for them. It's a huge loss, I think, and I think that the press has maybe missed out on the most important story that comes with this club dissolving, and that is the fact that it's a huge loss, and I think that you guys haven't reported as much on it as you should. It's a huge loss for South African football. South African football needs clubs like Supersport United, Bidvest Wits, to compete with the top 3 clubs in the country. And I personally think that today we are a weaker football nation with the loss of Bidvest Wits. Other than that, emotional times for everyone.
Yeah, perhaps on the sentiment we've missed out on that, but I think if it wasn't for the press, I don't think many people would have known about this sale until it came to light, which was quite late after the initial reports. But maybe can you just let us in on, where did the sort of demise of the club start? I mean, was your departure sort of one part to the whole downfall of the club in terms of Bidvest wanting to sell? I'm sure you would have fought tooth and nail to keep the club if I mean you were still a non-executive director. I mean, if as the CEO, would you have had more weight in terms of deciding what happens to the club from the club's point of view, rather than Bidvest just deciding to let go of everything?
I think that we all tried, and I certainly did, and I know that a number of people tried to convince Bidvest not to sell the club. I think there's been a lot of speculation around why Bidvest sold the club. Issues around budget and this and that, and really those who say things like that actually know nothing about this club. One thing I know for sure, and that is that it wasn't an issue around budget. We kept to budget, or the budget that was allocated to us by Bidvest throughout all the seasons, certainly the seasons that I was involved, and I know that was the case in this last season as well. So I don't think that the issue was around budget. If you've got 10 Rand as a budget and you get told that's your budget, you work with the 10 Rand. If the following season somebody tells you, well, you only have 8 Rand now, and then you work with 8, and so forth and so forth. So I don't think that the financial aspect of it that has been played out quite a bit in the media was a consideration at all. And in fact, I dare say that I know for a fact that wasn't the issue. What I do think was an issue, and I speak now in my personal capacity, not as a board member of the club, is that with the pandemic, I think that with so many retrenchments happening across the country, with so many people on layoffs and getting retrenched, I think, and I don't speak for Bidvest, I think that to be spending money on a football club, it doesn't matter whether you were spending 10 Rand or 8 Rand or 6 Rand or 5 Rand, didn't make sense when people were getting laid off and retrenched. So under the current economic climate, it probably made more sense to Bidvest to sell the club than not. I don't think it was a financial consideration. Like I said, if you get told that you can no longer work on 10 and you must work on 5, you work on 5. I really think that the pandemic took its toll on the future of the club.
Good afternoon, Jose. Velile here. Just looking back, last year, when you left the club, even though you still continued to be a consultant to the club, what would you say had changed? Because I remember this is at the time when also, I think at the beginning of the season, there were some retrenchments, some staff members had to go. And I remember even some of the players also leaving, even the likes of Robin Johannes as well. What would you say what would have changed or was done differently from the time Jose joined Bidvest?
Like I said just a minute ago, there were financial constraints. But that's fine. Like I said, clubs' budgets change from season to season. That happens at Bidvest. That's like it happens at Barcelona or any club in the world, no matter how big or small. The budget issue was there, but I think that we were in strong enough a financial position where we had such a great squad in terms of their market value that we were able to sell, like we did every season, or every other season, sell a player where we needed to in order to balance the books. Last season was no different. You're quite right. I was here at the time when I left was the beginning of the season, but as you all know, I left for personal reasons, and it doesn't change the fact that I think that Jonathan Schloss did a great job in my absence. He followed through with a lot of the things that we had implemented and did a fine job under very, very difficult circumstances. And I think we did enjoy, or certainly Jonathan continued to enjoy the support of the board, of the Bidvest board. Like I said, what did change, I think, was the pandemic, and that changed things significantly. And I think that, but for the pandemic, and I say this tongue in cheek because I think only Bidvest can really comment on this, but for the pandemic, I think that Bidvest Wits would still be around today.
I just kind of linking it with the Wits and you now being with Exco. Are there possibly any discussions about the status selling and whether you limit it or it comes to an end? Because we heard from Brad George yesterday where he was saying that to go from being involved with the club for so many years and then now you're out of a job, is it something that maybe the Exco is considering or talking about?
You're talking now about the Bidvest Wits staff, are you?
Yes.
Generally everyone. So to the best of my knowledge, and I was to some extent involved in that process. I know that Bidvest have compensated the staff, and let me say that as far as I'm concerned, I think handsomely in terms of compensating people for having lost their jobs now as a result of this dissolving of the club. But I think that the quality of the people that are here, that have been here over the last few years, will have little trouble in finding jobs. Like I said at the beginning, you you couldn't find a finer bunch of people in terms of the quality of their work, the level of their expertise. Other clubs will certainly benefit from the quality of the people that are leaving this club. It's just very sad that most of them won't be able to work together again.
No, I also had a similar question on the selling of the status, because it's something that has been affecting a lot of communities, both in both divisions, the Premier and the First Division. And I know that when the status is sold, maybe there's a good side because the business can go bankrupt. But in terms of finding the balance, is it something maybe which is proving to be difficult for the ESCO in terms of finding the balance, especially where you find that a status has to move provinces, because now you are leaving a community which had invested a lot in that club, not financially maybe, but in terms of the support?
I think that's a very good question, Ellie. And I must tell you that over the years, being at EXCO, that balance has been something that we've tried to strike a balance between the financial aspects or the financial reasoning behind the sale versus the loss of yet another brand in the PSL. But I think that you're all acutely aware of the fact that a lot of clubs over the last few years have found themselves in financial difficulties. The economic climate hasn't made it easy. And I think that we were at the stage as an EXCO where things were going to get more difficult in terms of the sale of franchises than before. Hence me saying that we were trying to strike that balance. I think, yet again, going back to the pandemic, I think the pandemic has impacted immensely on the PSL and a lot of the franchises. And I think that right now, we're finding a lot more sale of football clubs than in the past. But that's the financial reality that we find ourselves in the country. And if EXCO doesn't approve some of those sales, you're going to find clubs are going to close shop. So you're quite right. We have to try and strike that balance. It's increasingly difficult to do so in this current economic climate. But we've got to be sensible about things, and we've got to make the right decisions at the right time. Right now, that's the reality of the situation.
Just what has been the process since the final game for the club? Has it been are you guys like closing shop as an office? What's happened with the players? Is it this over the next month that you're doing all of this?
Yeah, so as you know, I'm not really operationally involved at this point in time. I'm actually sitting in the Bidvest Wits office in order to do this interview. And I was just speaking to Jonathan right now, and it's one of the sad stories that comes with this, with the club closing down. And he was telling me now that, the club played the last game on Saturday, and the staff just won't go home. They're still hanging around in the office. But that's the kind of people you have at Bidvest. Nobody wants to go home. Everybody is hoping that maybe they'll come into the office and get the great news that the club isn't being sold anymore. But they're a great bunch of people, and from what I understand, and I speak subject to correction because, like I said, I'm not involved operationally anymore. There are a few things that need to be done between now and the end of the month. But I suspect that by the end of the month, all that needs to be done will be done in terms of the handover to the new owners. I think that Jonathan and the rest of the staff are basically cleaning up shop before they close at the end of the month.
Just the final question from my side. You are a SAFA LC member as well, and during your reign, it's also at a time when there was no junior national team which would be announced without Bidvest Wits players, be it under 17 World Cup, under 20 World Cup, or Olympics. And I'm sure when you were mentioning SuperSport United, Bidvest Wits, this is what you were also referring to. And now, and also reflecting in that, you look at the business entity which is buying, or the club which is buying the status, doesn't have structures at all. And I'm trying to find balance on the PSL club licensing and how this new entity is going to take care of this. Because it also means that now, not only just the PSL is losing, but also the national teams are losing.
Yeah, Veli, you're 100% correct. I think that's one of the many sad stories that come with Bidvest Wits dissolving. I think that we had one of the finest academies in the country, if not the finest. Obviously, I'd like to think that it was the finest, but clubs like SuperSport and Bidvest Wits and Ajax Cape Town have been at the forefront of development of players in this country, and the fact that Bidvest is no longer there is going to be another blow to South African football from an academy point of view. I just hope that at least these youngsters, I know that Bidvest has been working hard in terms of trying to place these players because we have some of the finest youngsters at this club in the country. And going forward, yes, you're 100% right, Billy. And I just hope that somebody else will pick up the mantle and you know, make inroads like we did and like SuperSport has and like Ajax has. And hopefully we'll see more and more clubs taking development seriously because it's South African football's future that's at stake. And I would like to see more investment in the development of young footballers from more clubs, not just the likes of the SuperSports and the Bidvest Wits and the Ajax. I know that Chiefs and Pirates and Sundowns have also got very, very good academies with some great players. But I do fear a little that some of the biggest clubs in the country in terms of development are disappearing. But hopefully somebody will pick up that mantle and carry on from where Bidvest Wits left off.
Mr. Ferreira, just to wrap up, on a lighter note, I mean, as I think it was 7 years for you with the club, do you maybe want to share with us the shrewdest bit of business you've done in your 7 years with the club as CEO? You signed obviously some great players, going on to win the league. Has there been one sort of piece of business that stood out for you as, you know, maybe the not the toughest, but perhaps the best piece of business you've done for the club?
That's a good question, Chad. I really don't know. Our business model is well known to you all and everyone in the country. Our business model was a simple one. You go out and you get yourself a free agent and you sell him for millions. That was the business model. Some we were very successful with. I think that by and large, the vast majority of the players that we brought in fitted the mold of the club ethic, the family ethic that was always here at the club. We tried to identify players that could share that vision with us. In terms of shrewd business, I really can't tell you, Chad. Maybe you can throw me a couple of names and I'll tell you how shrewd a decision it was or not. But but there are beautiful stories. There's the Tyson story is a beautiful story. I mean, if you look at the squad of our players, the ones who just played now at the end of the season, and you go through that squad and to think that they are some of the most wanted footballers in the country today, and they all came to us, but the vast majority, I think probably all of them, were either academy players or we snapped them up in the free agency market, available to each and every other club in the country. And we snapped them up as free agents, and they were hugely successful to us, with us. And where we had to sell, we sold. Most instances, if not all instances, we made profit on the players that we brought in. So yes, I can't think of anyone specifically, but I'm happy to share any stories of any player that you want to ask me about.
Yeah, no, maybe there. Phakamani to Ahly, maybe you look back as one of the most successful stories during your reign.
Which one? Sorry, Billy.
Phaka to Ahly.
Yeah, yeah, that was probably one of the biggest transfers in the history of South African football. The funny thing, and here's an interesting story that nobody knows, and I think that today I can divulge it. Phakamani, we received an offer for Phakamani from Galatasaray in Turkey 2 or 3 months after he started playing for us in the first team. And it was a €2 million offer, and I'll never forget that Mr. Joffe at the time turned it down. And it was €2 million at the time, was a huge amount of money. And
sure.
He turned it down, and the irony of the story is that we got the offer, I think, in the middle of January, during the January window period, when we got the written offer, and Mr. Joffe, in his wisdom, he was the chairman, thought that it would be best that we didn't sell the player. I advised him to sell the player. He didn't think we should. And the irony of it is that I think in the first week of February, Phakamani had that horrible injury that everybody knows about, and he was out for about 8 months. And we landed having to sell Phakamani to Ahly for an incredible amount of money, but nevertheless less than what Galatasaray had offered us. But yes, that's a hugely successful transfer. And yet again, there's another story of how we managed to balance the books. There was never a season where we were over budget. And we did that with the support of Bidvest, who did put in money into the club on a yearly basis, but also in the transfer market where we needed to balance the books. That's how we did it.
In football, there's extra time, an edit of extra time. So this is just the final one. And I think it's one of the most talked about transfers.
And with 5 substitutions, Veli, with 5 substitutions.
You know, COVID has presented us that, Jose. Villa, I know how you had resisted selling Villa, I think for 2 to 3 seasons. And finally, you let him go. But before going to Sundowns, there was talk of Chiefs deal, and I think you had also agreed something there. What was happening around that deal?
Sure. You guys really want to know the stories now, eh? When I didn't give it to you back then, now's your opportunity. So the story with Villa is obviously Villa was a special player, came through our academy ranks, and did you know that he was found by our kit manager, Jack? I don't know how many of you know that. Playing street football in the townships, and he brought him over to our academy, and the rest is history. But yes, of course, we didn't want to lose Villa. We tried to persuade Villa to stay with us for as long as we could. But it came a stage where he had clearly outgrown us. There was interest from Kaizer Chiefs. There was interest from Mamelodi Sundowns, and I know I always get flack for being anti-Kaizer Chiefs. I'm not too sure why. They say I never want to sell players to Kaizer Chiefs, and of course that's not true. I have an excellent relationship with the chairman, Kaizer Motaung, with Bobby, with Jessica, with everyone at Kaizer Chiefs. The decisions as to whether a player goes to Kaizer Chiefs or goes to Orlando Pirates or goes to Mamelodi Sundowns with a club like Bidvest is ultimately a financial decision. And at the time, Mamelodi Sundowns made us an offer which was substantially better than the one that was made to us by Kaizer Chiefs. And like I said to you, we were never going to sell Villa unless we needed to balance the books. So we sold Villa. It was a financial decision, and where we got the best transfer fee was with Mamelodi Sundowns, and we sold him to Mamelodi Sundowns. But yes, Kaizer Chiefs was interested, and I know that Villa was interested at the time as well in going to Kaizer Chiefs. But we needed to take a financial decision, and that's what we did. And Villa is now at Mamelodi Sundowns, and as I understand it, he's very happy there. Yeah, that's the story with Villa.
Sorry, just to wrap up, Andy, see, we asked about you possibly partnering up with Gavin Hunt again in the future, and I think you missed on that answer. Do you mind just quickly answering that?
Where's Gavin going, Chad?
I don't know, but I mean, in football, nothing's impossible. So we never know.
No, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. Look, I don't think Gavin knows where he's going next. But right now, I don't like to talk about future plans. Right now, I don't know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Actually, I do. I've got an exco tomorrow. I'll tell you about Thursday tomorrow because nowadays I take it one day at a time, and let's see what happens. I think that the pandemic has thrown people a little bit off, and it's very difficult to plan nowadays further than a day with a pandemic. I know that I'll be involved. I am involved, and I will continue to be involved in the game. I love the game way too much to leave the game, be it at a club, be it with a PSL, be it whatever. I'll always be involved. I love the game too much. You all know that. As to what I'll be doing next month, watch the space. I really don't know. Even I don't know.